There is a photograph of a woman taken sometime in the 1860s, and she looks absolutely furious. Arms crossed, jaw set, eyes fixed on the camera like it owes her money. For a long time, people looked at pictures like this and assumed that people in the 19th century were just miserable, stern, joyless, possibly in physical pain at all times. But that explanation never quite held up. And when you dig into why nobody smiled in old photographs, the answer pulls you somewhere completely unexpected. Somewhere that says far more about us right now than it does about them back then. Start with what you already know. You have seen these pictures. Grandparents of grandparents standing in front of wooden houses, children posed like tiny adults, soldiers staring through you from before a war that would kill them. The almost universal reading, the thing every person says, is that life was harder then. People had less to smile about. That is the comfortable answer, the one that lets us feel like progress, but it is almost certainly wrong. Because here is the thing, smiling is not new, laughter is not new. If you visit the ruins of Pompeii, sealed in volcanic ash in 79 AD, you find graffiti about jokes, about parties, about people making each other laugh. Medieval manuscripts are packed with cartoons of people grinning. Ancient Greek comedy was drawing full crowds 400 years before Christ was born. The impulse to grin, to show delight, to pull your cheeks back and show your teeth, that is not a modern invention. It is embarrassingly old. So why did everyone stop doing it the moment a camera appeared? The answer most people jump to is the long exposure time. Early photographs required the subject to sit completely still for minutes at a time, sometimes with a metal brace hidden behind their head to keep them steady, and holding a smile for that long is genuinely hard. Your muscles give out, you blur. So people chose neutral expressions they could hold. That part is true, but it is only about a quarter of the story. And the part it leaves out is the part that actually matters. Think about the earliest photographs ever taken. We are talking the late 1830s, daguerreotypes, images captured on polished silver plates. Exposure times were not seconds. They were sometimes 10 to 30 minutes. A carriage moving through the frame would disappear entirely, too fast to register. And in those conditions, yes, you would not smile. You would barely breathe. But then something interesting happens as the decades pass. By the 1850s, exposure times have dropped to seconds. By the 1870s, fractions of a second. Cameras are getting genuinely fast, and people still are not smiling. The technical excuse quietly evaporates and the behavior stays, which means something else is doing the work. That something else is a set of ideas about what a portrait is supposed to be. And to understand those ideas, you have to go back further than photography entirely, back to painted portraits of wealthy Europeans in the 16th and 17th century. Portrait painters of that era had an explicit philosophy, written down, debated, taken seriously. A painting should capture the permanent, not the passing. A smile is a passing thing. It flickers, it changes, it belongs to a specific moment. A great portrait, the thinking went, should show you as you essentially are, stripped of any temporary emotion. A dignified, neutral expression was considered the honest one. The smiling face was the false one. And this was not fringe thinking. This was the dominant aesthetic of portraiture for roughly 300 years before the camera was invented. So when photography arrives, and suddenly everyone, not just the wealthy elite, can have a portrait made, they carry that entire philosophy with them. The camera is new. The cultural script about what a portrait means is ancient. You go to have your picture taken, and your brain reaches for the same frame it has always used. This is a serious, formal record of who I am. You do not grin at a formal record. Nobody grins at their passport. But there is still another layer underneath this one, and it is the strangest part of all. In the 19th century, across Europe and America, smiling widely in public had a specific set of associations, and almost none of them were good. Showing your teeth was what children did, what drunks did, what carnival performers and street hustlers did. A person of quality, a person of substance and social standing, kept their mouth composed. There are etiquette manuals from the 1800s, actual published guides to social behavior, that specifically warn against laughing with your mouth open. It was considered vulgar, undignified, a display of weakness. So now imagine you are a factory worker in 1880 and you have saved up for months to afford a studio portrait. This is a significant event, maybe the only photograph ever taken of you. You are going to send it to family or keep it as a legacy for your children. You are not going to show up and grin like someone who does not understand how the world works. You are going to look exactly the way serious people look. You are going to look like you belong. And this is the part that starts to feel uncomfortably familiar, because what they were doing in those photographs was performing a version of themselves for an audience they could not see yet. They were thinking about how they would appear to strangers in the future. They were managing their image, which is, if you sit with it for a second, exactly what we do now, just with the arrow pointing in the opposite direction. Think about how many photographs you have taken of yourself in the last year. Think about how many of them you are smiling in, and think about why. At some point in the 20th century, the dominant script for photographs completely inverted. Smiling became the formal pose, not smiling became the suspicious one. If you look through a family album from the 1950s, everyone is starting to grin. By the 1970s, not smiling in a photo requires an explanation. By the time Instagram exists, a portrait without a smile reads as artistic, moody, possibly a little pretentious. The switch, when it happened fast. Historians who study this point to a few things. The rise of amateur photography was enormous. When Kodak released their Brownie camera in 1900 for $1, suddenly photographs were not formal studio events anymore. They were snapshots, casual, spontaneous, private. And when you photograph someone at a birthday party or a picnic, you want to capture the feeling of the moment. You want joy. The word Kodak itself started using in their advertising was exactly that. You press the button, we do the rest. They were selling you an emotion, not a document. And then advertising more broadly gets into the game. In the early 20th century, companies selling everything from soap to breakfast cereal started putting smiling faces on their products, their posters, their campaigns. The smile became commercially associated with the good life, with health, with success, with approval. Decades of that conditioning rewired what a smile means in a captured image. It stopped meaning, I am momentarily delighted, and started meaning, I am a person who is doing well. It became its own kind of formal code, just like the stern, neutral face had been a formal code before it. Which brings you to the question hiding at the center of all of this. How much of any expression in any photograph is actually spontaneous? Because the woman in the 1860s was performing composure, following a cultural script about dignity and permanence. And you, right now, when a camera comes out, you perform warmth, you perform approachability, you perform happiness. The camera comes out and your face does a thing. You know the thing. We all know the thing. A slightly different version of your face appears. The one you think looks best, the one you have practiced, consciously or not, 1,000 times in front of mirrors and front-facing cameras. What the history of smiling in photographs is really tracking is not emotions at all. It is social power. It is the shifting rules about what kind of person you need to appear to be in a given era. In an era where dignity and restraint signaled status, people performed restraint. In an era where warmth and positivity signal success, people perform warmth. The underlying machinery is identical. Only the costume changed. There is a photograph that sometimes gets passed around online, taken in the 1800s, of a young girl who is absolutely beaming. Full open smile, eyes lit up, clearly laughing at something just off frame. It stands out so sharply from every other photograph of the era that people assume it must be mislabeled or faked. But it is probably just a child who had not yet learned the rules, who did not yet know what a photograph was supposed to mean. So she just sat there and felt what she felt and let her face show it. That girl grew up. She learned the rules eventually. They all did. We all do. The technology will keep changing. What cameras can capture is already moving into territory that feels like science fiction. AI tools that read micro-expressions, that can reconstruct what someone was feeling from the tension in a single frame. In 100 years, researchers might look back at our photographs the way we look back at the daguerreotypes. They might notice patterns in what we chose to show and what we chose to hide. They might find the rules we followed so automatically that we forgot they were rules at all. And the question that is worth sitting with, the one this whole story is really building toward, is this. When you look directly at a camera today and your face does its practiced thing, its careful presentation of the self you want to be seen as, is that more honest than the woman in the 1860s, arms crossed, giving nothing away? Or have you just learned a different way of hiding?